Great. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We're going to go ahead and get started with some introductions, and we have an icebreaker that I've put in the chat. We are just asking for your name, title, organization, and then what's a show, podcast, or book you've been into lately? And I can read a few from the chat. I can get us started with mine. So Maria Mendoza, Early Learning Hub System Analyst here at Delk. And I think a show that I've been watching lately is The Pit. I really like season one, and I've been waiting for a couple of episodes to come out to get into season two. And this weekend, I did a lot of watching of that show with my husband. So that's one of my favorites right now. Okay, and we have Vanessa, this Fiscal and Operations Manager for Marion and Polk. My cousin and I have been reading Frida McFadden books lately. Thanks, Vanessa. Okay, we have Jen from Yamhill. I am loving The Pit too. So good. Yes, Jen. We'll have to talk about it when I see you. Shira, Director for Rivers Early Learning Hub. I've been reading The Good Death, written by Suzanne O'Brien, who inspired me to become a death doula. Oh my goodness, Shira. I've been hearing about that more, and I think there was an episode of The Pit that had touched on that as well. So that's really interesting. Let's see. Oh, they're coming in quick now. I will do Christy Collins, Director for Early Learning Hub of Lynn Benton and Lincoln. Soul Summit Podcast. Great. And then we have Rod, Eastern Oregon Early Learning Hub, Ted Lasso for like the fourth time. I haven't watched that yet, Rod, so I'll have to check that out. And I'll do one more. Chris from the Early Childhood Hub of Lane County. I recently finished All Souls series of books. Good witchy read. Okay, great. Thanks, Chris, and thanks everyone. Feel free to check out the chat for other things folks are reading or watching. So thank you so much for taking part in this. And so I will hand it over to Nancy, who's going to just walk us through the agenda.
Hi, welcome everyone. Thanks for being here. Nancy Howard. I'm also a Early Learning Hub System Analyst. And we'll get started with Becky and Joel. They've got a DELC and Community Systems Office update. I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Maria. Hi, everybody. It's great seeing you all. I hope you're all getting some vitamin D, a dose of sunshine, and longer days. I'm really enjoying that myself. And yeah, we just wanted to start off with a few Community Systems Office updates and Delph-wide updates. So Kate, thank you for doing slides. If you could go to the first one. So to start, DELC has identified 5 2026 strategic priorities as our focus areas within our strategic plan, Growing Oregon Together. And I've asked Joel, our Deputy Director of Programs, to share a bit with you all about how we'll be prioritizing and coordinating our resources around those priority areas and the key projects that have been identified within them. So I'll pass it over to Joel. Thank you, Joel.
Yeah, thank you, Becky. Hi, everyone. Joel Metlin, Deputy Director of Programs for DELC. It's good to see you all. And yeah, so these 5 priority areas, we still have our 5-year strategic plan, which we're following. But we're trying to get very specific each year now about what we're trying to do with our limited resources during that year. And so we have these 5 areas, and I'll cover what they are quickly and give you some examples just so you understand. And these are really our internal prioritization. So this might explain why you start to see us take certain actions or focus on certain things during this current calendar year. So the first is building a cohesive preschool system across Oregon. And really what this is it's the complement to the statewide work that the governor's office is leading to look at what would universal preschool or universal childcare look like in Oregon. There's a roundtable that's doing that. But we want to be hyper specific and sort of look at our current preschool programs and make sure that we're being purposeful about how they're designed and looking at, in particular, Preschool Promise and OPK, looking at what's different between them and trying to figure out if this is the right things, right designs that we want for these programs. We've gotten a lot of feedback from people over the last few years in terms of how these are working or not working together. And we want to make sure that we're aligning them where possible and where it makes sense So we're going to really do some work of analyzing what that looks like and seeing if there's any potential changes that we want to make to the program designs to better suit folks' needs, whether that's to add more flexibility for certain types of situations, maybe for tribes or for folks in rural communities, whatever it is. We want to take kind of a fresh look while we have this opportunity. So that's sort of priority number one area. That also includes looking at how people access the program. So the other priority project within this priority is our coordinated enrollment work, which you all are familiar with, and why we keep pushing on that. This is really important, not just to have programs that work well, but then that people can navigate and actually use. So our second priority area is around delivering high quality customer service and ensuring child safety. The major projects that we're undertaking right now is implementation of our new early learning management system. And this is the piece of software that's going to replace our outdated systems for licensing and for childcare payments. It is a huge undertaking and it's just rolling out. And so there's a lot of work and effort internally and resources being spent on it. And it's going to be a lot of change for everyone, both internally and externally. And so we need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make that rollout work and then addressing the inevitable issues that are going to come up. But it also creates opportunity for us, to fix some longstanding things with customer service, like how we do payments, how we can track data on a licensing from a licensing perspective and use that. So this is a big change for us as an agency. The third area is advancing tribal sovereignty and partnerships. One of the great things that came out of the last long session was the passage of the Tribal Early Learning Plan and Fund. And so now we have the responsibility this year of standing up the advisory group for it, for building out the plan, for making sure that the tribes can lead the way and that we're supportive as best as possible. So there's a lot of work going into that right now. And this also includes another priority of us implementing our tribal consultation policy. We had developed it over the last couple of years, and now it's coming time for implementation where we actually have to use it and meaningfully consult with tribes on any changes that might impact them. The next one is addressing the structural deficit for ERDC and developing a long-range plan for program success. We've really been in the last couple of years doing a lot of work to try to figure out how to pay for ERDC to make it fit within its legislatively approved budget. And we've done a lot of work this year and have found ways to be able to pay for the current biennium, but the structural deficit where we have more people on the caseload than the budget can afford, it still exists. So we have to make some changes. We have to figure out what we can do with the program and ensure that it's still meeting its goals and it's meeting people's needs, but trying to make sure that it actually works within the parameters that we've been given as a state agency. So there's ongoing work there with looking at different policy options and ways that we can change the program to potentially make it meet all the needs that we have. And then the last one is one that really you'll start to see in terms of choices we make around our preschool programs or our contracts with you. And this is around what we're calling fiscal integrity and program integrity. So fiscal integrity for us is really about our use of money. Last biennium, we had an underspend where we left tens of millions of dollars on the table that then got reverted back to the general fund or to the early learning account. And we want to make sure that we are spending every single dollar that we have. So we're putting new processes and procedures in place to monitor our budget, to make sure folks are spending down their money. If folks aren't able to spend down the money, we're moving that money to somewhere else, reallocating it. So you're going to start to see some changes in policy and practice in terms of your own contracts, and then also contracts for Preschool Promise or for OPK, about how we move around money, because we really have a mandate to spend every dollar, and it's really important that it goes back into community for the purpose that it was intended. And we will ask for a little bit of grace as we do this, because we're standing up new processes. Hopefully this year or this biennium gets to be a test of new systems and ways of managing the budget, and that we're just refining in future years. The second piece of this one is our program integrity project, which is, okay, now we've spent the money. Was it spent on the right things? Are we making sure there's no waste and fraud in the system? Are we getting what we're actually paying for? So you probably are hearing about this at a state, at a federal level, about an increased scrutiny on folks and how they spend public dollars. And we've had a chance to take a look at what we do, and as a new agency, we see that like there's plenty of opportunity here to improve how we track what our money is spent on and making sure that we're addressing any potential misuses of it. So this is again where we're looking at what are we asking the people to do? What are they reporting back to us? How are we doing quality reviews of that? There's a lot of different work that's within this bucket, but it does mean we'll have instances where if we do discover potential misuse of funds, that will end people's contracts or other things, and it's going to be another thing where we're going to have to build the processes and systems as we go, and there's going to be times where we need to we'll have lessons learned from how we're doing it and have to improve. But this is a big focus, and for us, we have some that have measures like this that have been in place for many years, like especially on the ERDC side, where their ODHS, the Oregon Department of Human Services, has a whole team that does program integrity, that does random checks on cases. We don't have a lot of that for our other programs, for our preschool programs here, and we need to build that capacity internally. So we'll be looking at what we need to do to stand that up. So those are the priority areas, and again, you can see there'll be some things that'll have direct impacts on you all, including on your specific contracts. And if you have questions about any of these things, please feel free to reach out. Again, all of these are things that we're actively working on and trying to figure out the best way to move forward.
Thanks, Joel. I'm going to dive in a little bit more deeply to a few aspects of the fiscal and program integrity and the cohesive preschool priority area. But does anybody have any clarifying questions for Joel and what he shared before we move on? Okay, great. Thanks, Kate. So yeah, I'm going to just highlight a few of the activities and shifts stemming from a couple of these priority areas. So starting with our focus on aligning DELC's fiscal and programmatic work to ensure integrity, sustainability, and clarity. DELC has identified, as Joel shared, this as a top priority for the agency this year. So you'll likely see that reflected in a few different ways over the course of the year. On the slides, the first two bullets really speak to the overarching goal of program integrity and ensuring the proper use of public funds and that we're being good stewards of those funds. So you'll potentially or likely be getting some more communications or a deeper focus on spending and deliverables when there is a deliverable due. It might be more common that you're hearing back from Nancy and Maria, just getting some more clarifying information, just really doing the due diligence to make sure that we have the right level of insight into the work that's being done. And the last three bullets, the bottom three here, look more specifically at how we're working to ensure that funds are expended so that they can be used to the greatest impact. So you all should have received last week a communication to just let you know that we're going to be looking a lot more closely at underspending this biennium, in that if we identify that an early learning hub seems to be at risk for underspending, if you're tracking low on your spending, that we're going to want to reach out and partner with you to get a better sense or a better projection of your biennial spend down. And so in the next couple of days, potentially even today, letters will be going out to early learning hubs who our team has identified as potentially tracking under what we might anticipate that you would have spent down for your various funding streams at this point into the biennium. And if you receive that letter, it'll ask you for some additional information so we can better understand your plans for spending throughout the rest of the year or the grant period. And we'll ask for a time to check in to have a conversation to just get even more detailed so that we can make sure that we're partnering with you to have the most current accurate information possible. Our next spending, so your next claims will be due the end of May. So we'll be looking at those claims and what that does to the spending trajectory at that point in time. And also looking at other factors such as historical spending during the last biennium to ultimately make a decision about any grant funding reductions to underspent hubs late in the spring, and developing a plan for how we'll utilize underspent funds throughout the rest of the biennium. So all of that to say that we'll be working closely with you, looking at this closely over the course of the year and the biennium. And there should be some communications coming out very soon to those who were starting to see some potential underspend in your grant agreements. So I just want to pause there and see if you have any questions before I jump to the next topic of conversation. I do see a couple things in the
This is Alicia from the South Central Early Learning Hub. I do want to say I really appreciate that you guys are doing this whole process and making sure that we're all being good stewards of this. I just want to maybe bring to attention, like those of us that are hubs that have historically not underspent or never underspent in the last 7 or 8 years. Some of the way the conversations have been handled have felt kind of pretty icky because it's felt like they were more based towards hubs that were underspending. And I don't know. It's been a little bit difficult to deal with in that way because we have been really good stewards of the funds and made sure it went out into the community and that we got extra advertising done and translation and helped with the transition and everything like that. And so it's felt, I don't have good words for it. It just hasn't been great. At least from my side of things as a hub that has not underspent. So I just wanted to state that.
I appreciate that feedback. Are you talking more about communications that have been coming out, the agency-wide level communications, or?
No, more like how we've received feedback on our reports, and things like that, of it not feeling as much like curiosity questions and more like feeling like very like rigid, like we're doing something wrong type of thing. Those conversations have felt very like something is wrong and we're being interrogated for things, versus for those of us that have, spent that, it hasn't been like, hey, this is great, you guys have spent this year to year to year, what are your plans, what's going on, and coming from a place of curiosity. And I guess that's where I guess I would just kind of appreciate it to be less like a IRS audit when we have those conversations, and more from a place of like curiosity, or maybe like, hey, you guys have spent all your funds basically for the last 8 years, what can we learn from these situations, type of thing.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you for the feedback and your very honest feedback on what your experience has been. It sounds like you're in response to when you've submitted your claims or your expenditure reports.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And sorry to take up so much time. The other thing I was going to ask, so when you're going through and you're talking about reductions for hubs that are underspent, for those of us that have plans and we've been trying to pull extra funds out of coordination or finding other grants or something to try to continue to grow and support the kids in our area and have not underspent, will those funds possibly be reallocated to those of us if we can come up and show you a plan of like what we would spend the funds on or what amount we could use in case you have hubs that are underspent?
That's possible. The next stage of work that we're really doing, that's a great question, is to finalize what our plan will be for the reallocation or the use and spend down of any funds that that are subject to a reduction, and what those different opportunities may be to get those funds back into communities. Thanks for asking. Did- oh, I think she just went on mute. Anybody else have any questions on the?
I don't, it's not a question, it's a statement. And I know like we're probably gonna appear to be somewhat underspent this year, although that's not gonna end up being the case. I think there's a challenge in implementing a renewed focus on spending in this first biennia that we now have multi-year grant agreements. That's a little bit of a tough mix, right? Because we're operating off of a new grant structure that we hadn't had the past that's bisected by two different agreements when we're really used to operating on biennial terms. And I think the other thing that you'll find as we dive into the details of this will be some of us have multi-year agreements with grantees in order to reduce administrative burden and improve the cohesiveness of the programming. And so spending is not going to be even. You're going to find spending happens in the back end of a year. And then depending on the contractor, school districts, there's a tendency to be very slow in invoicing, and we'll get invoices more on the back half. So Becky, I just think be prepared for there to be a lot of like weediness when we delve into like how the spending looks and what markers we're going to want to set up as like demarcation points about clawbacks or anything like that.
Yeah, 100%. And thank you for raising that. And that's one of the reasons that we want to make sure that we're partnering with you to understand the overall picture and spending trajectory that you're anticipating for the year. And we do understand that there are certain funding streams that are not necessarily evenly spent throughout a grant period. So we're definitely aware of that and would be factoring that in with your help. So appreciate that. Yeah.
Becky, Shira's comment is also we are in bargaining this year, so it is unclear what type of salary increases we will be looking at for year 2.
Can you just say, maybe Shira, would you mind coming off mute and just expanding on that for a second? Or that's something we could take offline if, you know,
I mean, I know
appropriate
probably
for one-on-one.
some of my colleagues might be in the same boat that the ESDs are going through their collective bargaining processes. And so that, depending on how that goes, that might demonstrate increases in salaries and benefits, of course. So we were told to add an additional 8% for year 2. I don't know if that's kind of the norm of what folks do. Still looking for that awesome budgeting class that will help me know like what the norms are on those types of things. But that's where what we were advised. So just, when we think about that, that's definitely going to show, that there's money that we didn't spend in year 1 because we know that increase is coming in year 2 and we have flat funding, so having to make those accommodations.
Okay.
We do the same thing with the ESD for our second year. What's been pretty successful for us is figuring a 5 to 6% increase. But then you also have to, well, I guess in this biennium, we're not going to have the PERS increase. So the same 5 to 6% is probably what we'll be figuring for our budget without the collective bargaining agreements done.
Okay. So yeah, you're hearing a range, sounds like 5 to 8% could be sort of what you're anticipating as a shift between years.
It looks like Abby has a similar comment. We are too. Our agency usually recommends 48% in year one and 52% spending in year two of biennial agreements, but it is tricky in bargaining years when COLA adjustments are bargained for the full union. Thanks, Abby. And then Rod shares, sometimes to meet the needs of year two, we need to be very frugal in year one.
Mm-hmm.
And Renee, because our backbones vary, our strategies for spending also vary.
Yep.
Thanks, Renee.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's one of the fortunate things about there being 16 grantees is that we are able to have these one-on-one conversations with you to understand the specifics of your spending needs and strategies. Because we understand they're not all identical. Any other questions? I know it looks like, I can tell that it looks like I'm not looking at you right now, but I am. Okay, Kate, can we move on then? So I just wanted to also dive in a little bit more on the priority area, building a cohesive preschool system. I'll be co-leading this strategic focus area alongside Dorothy Spence, who directs DELC's Program Design and Administration Office. So this is a large cross-agency initiative, as Joel shared, that extends beyond the scope of coordinated enrollment, but there is significant overlap and alignment between our coordinated enrollment focus areas and the cohesive preschool system priority. So I've teased out some of the most closely aligned elements here on this slide, which include work to clarify and strengthen how children and families access preschool, prioritizing family choice, facilitating full enrollment, aligning OPK and Preschool Promise as complementary programs. Sydney Brown will also be deeply engaged in this work as a subject matter expert and our coordinated enrollment lead. But it does expand beyond some of the other areas that Joel pointed to, for example, participating in the governor's early child care and learning system roundtable. So we're still in the planning stages of this strategic priority, but the biggest focus tied to the community systems office will be the coordinated enrollment work streams. And so I thought it would be a good time to take stock of where we've gotten to and where we're going this year with coordinated enrollment, just do a little bit of an update. If we could go to the next slide. I am so excited that we've officially entered into the new grant agreement period with you as of the first of the month. Thank you for attending the kickoff meeting on March 18th, where Sydney was able to share important information about the new grant agreement, and you all asked really great clarifying questions so that we could develop a shared understanding of the expectations and the training and TA opportunities that are coming up for the new grant period. Some other significant dates and milestones to note on this slide, and I'll touch on them all a little bit more closely in the next few slides. We could go to the next one, please. So to start, I just want to again extend a huge thank you to Alessandro, Jessica, Lisa, Rod, and Renee for participating in the convened Coordinated Enrollment Partner Work Group. Back in November, Hub Director and OPK Director Work Group participants were invited to come back to the table and meet regularly through the end of March to help inform our phase 1 approach to implementing a few recommendations from the initial build initiative work group via the new grant agreement that just kicked off this month. So the work group's focus for this phase of the work was on improving enrollment coordination across the Preschool Promise program and OPK Head Start, a goal that is reflected in DELC's cohesive preschool priority focus this year. So that's going to be a major tie-in between these two initiatives. Next slide, please. So the work group, just as a reminder, brought forward 3 recommendations for implementation planning in this reconvened work group. The first 2, which are captured in the new coordinated enrollment agreement, are the MOU between hubs and OPK programs and the coordinated community needs assessment. So for the MOU, the group worked together to confirm a focus on MOUs between hubs and OPK programs in their region and to finalize a list of minimum required elements. And you all had an opportunity to hear about this at the kickoff meeting. We'll also be communicating this information with OPK directors, and we'll be visiting OPK directors at their monthly meeting in May to present out with the OPK directors from the work group on the overall efforts of the group. For the coordinated community needs assessment, the group helped to define goals and benefits for the collaborative planning effort and helped to start a draft of a template. So thank you so much. Sydney's goal is to have that finalized by the end of May. Right now, she and Rachel Elliott from Community Systems Office are pulling together a cross-office group at DELC to continue working on the template so we can bring in perspectives from OPK Head Start, Preschool Promise, CCR&R support team, and our research and data team as well. And Sydney and Mel Hanna, also from Community Systems, they also plan to join you at the spring gathering in Pendleton later this month to get some more insights on data needs and challenges for this process. So looking forward to engaging with you all there and moving this work even further forward together. And then the work group plans to get back together once more in May to provide feedback on the template and process before finalizing. Then moving down to the last item here for the eligibility screener, DELC was awarded PDG funding to create a self-screening eligibility tool and to engage families in its design. So as we delve further into the coordinated enrollment work group's recommendations to develop and implement resources to help families know what options are they're eligible for and what's available, we'll be leveraging those PDG funds to better understand families' experiences in accessing information and navigating eligibility, provider selection, and enrollment into early learning and care programs. I want to share a bit more about that, the screener and the PDG activities. If we could go to the next slide, please, Kate. So I know we provided an overview of all of the activities at a prior Hub Director meeting, but just to zoom in, this specific subset or activity is part of a set of sub-activities that DELC's initiating that span several DELC offices and fall within the goal of maximizing family choice across program options through consumer education and marketing. You can go to the next slide. So to ensure families in Oregon can easily understand, navigate, and access early care and education programs that meet their needs, DELC's implementing a coordinated strategy to improve consumer education, navigation support, and enrollment processes. The work that will be included in this project responds to gaps identified in the coordinated enrollment redesign work groups and in Oregon's ECE needs assessment, and it reflects priorities outlined in the state's ECE strategic plan. So looking at the slide, over the grant period, we'll be contracting to implement a multifaceted strategy that includes several sub-activities. And I have pulled out the sub-activities that will be led or co-led by community systems teams. And these are the ones that also really closely align with work that takes place in your communities through early learning hubs. So the first two I'll dive into a little bit more deeply. And then the third, advancing a family-centered system of early learning supports for providers, is being led by the Spark team, and you'll get an opportunity to learn more about that as well today. So let me just tell you a little bit about those first two as well, though. During the process of contracting, we hope to hear directly from families and to learn about how a new eligibility tool might be most useful to them. Sydney Brown will be co-leading the first initiative listed here through a partnership with Oregon's Kitchen Table, which is a statewide community engagement program out of PSU. And the feedback that's gained from that work will help inform a second sub-activity listed here, the development of the resource page and self-screening eligibility tool. And yes, so the plan will be to design and launch a mobile-friendly plain language resource page and screening tool for families. I believe Sydney sent out an invitation this morning to join her and the folks at Oregon Kitchen Table later this month so that we can share more about this work and begin the process of identifying family engagement opportunities in your regions. And then I wanted to just highlight a third sub-activity, the one that's listed here at the bottom of the screen, that will be launched a bit later in the funding period. And that's a statewide childcare awareness campaign. So the campaign will be informed by the insights that are gained during the community engagement activities and from the development of the resource and eligibility tools. So big thank you again to all of you and to our work group participants for helping to push these recommendations forward and to the point where we're able to now leverage some PDG funding to continue to explore how we can be providing some of these tools at a state level that will then ideally lead to our ability to support the work that you're doing regionally to help families gain access to the programs of choice. So one last coordinated enrollment update, and then I'll pause for some questions about this update before going into one final section. So you already received an email about this, so this is really just a refresher or a recap, but I wanted to capture the details here as well because we're very excited to be kicking off the new coordinated enrollment monthly series this Thursday. And as Sydney mentioned, all staff are welcome to attend this new meeting, but if you'd like to prioritize staff time and assign specific staff or yourself to attend the new meeting, this slide just helps to provide an overview of what you can expect to be covered at the Hub Preschool Promise meeting versus the Hub Coordinated Enrollment meetings. Basically, all of the non-preschool promise focused coordinated enrollment work, looking at the deliverables within the grant agreement, all of that's going to be centered or focused on in the coordinated enrollment meeting. So we know that between the Hub Directors Monthly meeting and the Hub PSP meeting and this new coordinated enrollment meeting, there's several required meeting spaces where important information is shared. So hopefully this breakdown just helps to identify who among your teams might be the most appropriate fit to attend in each space. And I will pause there for any questions around the coordinated enrollment update before just popping into one last quick update. Actually, let me pause and ask Nancy because I think we're a little over time.
Yeah, we're a little over time. Maybe we have time for one question.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, sorry everybody. And feel free to also just use the feedback form at the end if you have additional questions.
I did want to read aloud for the recording what Rod put in the chat. Thank you for this work. There was recently an OPK RFA that went out for 8 counties in Oregon, and the messaging only went to current OPK grantees. This could affect decisions around preschool promise slot placement. I only knew about it because one of my governance council members is an OPK grantee.
Now to 8 counties in Oregon. Sorry, I have to read it again. Oh, okay. Thanks, Rod, for flagging that. And I can't, there's something blocking. I can see that Danny has a comment, but I can't, there's something on my screen that's blocking it and I can't move it.
Yeah, Danny wrote, thanks, Rod. I was not aware of this yet.
We're happy to connect with our OPK partners on that as well. Rod.
And Becky, since there are no other questions yet, do you want to just follow up with this slide and then we can move on with Spark?
Yes, okay. I will try to do the abbreviated version of this, but I just wanted to finish my updates by sharing how much I value the opportunity to be in shared space with all of you, and that I always appreciate the chance to hear directly from you and to learn from you. And I wanted to acknowledge and thank whoever provided some feedback that you wanted to hear more from me too, and to grow our connection, and also to receive some more leadership updates, hopefully kind of like the one today. So I really appreciated receiving that feedback. And just to let you know, I've been thinking about different ways to enhance our points of connection, and I wanted to share some of my ideas with you. And so you can feel free to, since we won't really have time to engage right now, but feel free to use the feedback form at the end if you're liking or not liking any of these ideas. But for starters, Nancy and Maria and I will plan to build in some more regular times during these meetings for Joel and myself to be able to check in with you all and provide updates. And I'm thinking that, even with the competing topics, a quarterly cadence or thereabouts should work for that. So let's try that anyhow. And I was thinking it could be helpful to complement that, to try out some written communications from me to you that could include some agency updates and thoughts on how they may impact hubs or how they relate to hub priorities. And I also love the idea of having the opportunity to connect with you each directly. And so to support that, I'd like to try to join maybe about 4 of the 16 hub director check-ins each month. If my math is correct, and please somebody check it, that would allow me to connect with every hub on about a quarterly basis, in addition to the broader full group meetings. And then the last thing, I just wanted to take a quick moment to highlight the structure of the DELC team that supports early learning hubs, because I think it helps to explain how we show up in different settings. And I've learned that the staffing structure has varied over the years. So just wanted to point that Nancy and Maria are incredible hub system analysts. Both serve in program analyst 4 positions, which is the highest level in the program analyst professional series. And this is the only team that I supervise that includes staff at this level. So the classification carries a significant degree of autonomy and systems level responsibility. They are charged with planning and managing very complex statewide programs that require coordination across multiple agencies and partners. And I was going to go on to explain in even more detail, but I'll just say that suffice it to say that because of that, you may not always hear directly from me during all of our full group director meetings, because I intentionally give them a lot of space to lead in ways that honor their classification and their expertise and their role in supporting the statewide HUD system. But I also want to reassure you that we work very closely every week to stay aligned in our strategy and to remain deeply coordinated in how we support you. And very final thing, then I'll pass it back to Nancy and Maria, is I just wanted to highlight, if you may have already noticed already, that Kate Rosenberg, our amazing community systems coordinator, has been stepping further into her role supporting Delk's Early Learning Hub and coordinated enrollment projects. Some of this work is taking place behind the scenes, but you'll also see her helping to facilitate meeting segments, gather your feedback through tools such as the occasional Mentimeter, running slides, helping to support the collection of certain grant deliverables. And so we're just very grateful to have Kate on our team, offering our hub analysts and other community systems team members some really solid support and thought partnership. Just want to flag that, as you're likely to see her in more and more of our shared spaces. And so with that, I'm just going to pass it back to Nancy and Maria. And sorry for being over time.
That's okay. Thank you, Becky. And thank you, Joel. I'm not sure if you're still on the call. Appreciate the updates. And I think now we'll go ahead and shift over to the Spark team, Ash and Hallam. I think they've got a brief update for you. I'll hand it over.
Yeah, and we'll try to make it as brief as possible. Let's see. I have some slides. And then can you all see my screen? Yes, but
But it's not in presentation mode.
Both.
Thank you.
All right, well, my name is Halab Lowell. I am the Spark coordinator at Delk. Ash, do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Ash Michaels. I use they and them pronouns. I'm a Spark specialist here.
And thank you for inviting us into your space to talk about Spark. So our agenda for today, we're going to give a quick overview of what Spark is, and then a quick overview of the Spark redesign. And then we'll be talking about the Preschool Development Grant, or PDG, and the specifically the subactivity titled Advancing a Family-Centered System of Early Learning Supports and how that connects to Spark. And then lastly, we'll be talking about the accountability team recruitment, and hopefully we'll have time to answer some questions.
Yeah. All right, so always start with a quick, what is Spark? Spark is Oregon's quality recognition and improvement system. Many states have their own version of a QRIS. There have been changes to our QRIS over time, but it was originally intended to assess and improve programs and communicate quality efforts to families by in a variety of different ways. So in 2021, as a result of House Bill 2059, Spark was actually changed from a quality rating system to a quality recognition and improvement system that is not supposed to issue star ratings anymore. At that time, ELD committed to redesigning Spark with families and providers. And my allergies are hitting me a bit. I live in Odell, and the orchards are just full of blooming, my kids call it popcorn on the trees. So I'm going to try and work through that while I speak. So this slide is of our redesign approach that we've taken. It is using a participatory action research approach. And in that engage box, that blue one, you can see that families and providers were formed listening teams, went out into their communities and gathered information on what providers and families wanted and needed from Spark. Those teams were located all over Oregon. And after extensive listening, they made redesign recommendations. After that, members that were still interested moved on into forming a new team, since there was multiple teams, and they combined to be one team called the accountability team. And the accountability team is meant to be an ongoing part of Spark. And Halb and I, plus the Spark team at Western Oregon University, still meets with the accountability team regularly. And that's the team that's recruiting some more family members. So we'll touch more on that in a minute. The redesign box, that green box, shows how the accountability team worked together to set a new vision for Spark and developed a high-level design for Spark. And right now we're in the pilot box here, where we are testing things out and scaling up what works best. And the accountability team still does some design work, but also acts in kind of a consultant role to ensure that we continue to build things out in a manner that aligns with their vision. And their vision on the next slide is for Spark to be a welcoming and inclusive program that strives to connect all children and families in Oregon with great and responsive early education, development, and care by supporting and celebrating providers. So everything we do on the system side and out with partners is intended to get us closer and closer to fulfilling that vision.
So as part of the redesign, Spark adopted a new framework, the Spark Quality Improvement Cycle, and this was part of the accountability team's high-level redesign plan. The QI cycle is a reflective goal-setting process that's focused on supporting programs in implementing individualized goals. And this cycle is still being refined, and as well as other aspects of the redesign plan and being built out. So you'll hear us say a lot that Spark is evolving through a series of pilots. And with the preschool development grant funds, that will help with the evolution through pilots and making other system adjustments. Earlier this year, there was a video that was sent out that outlined the new Spark funding opportunities. If you didn't get a chance to see it, I'll just summarize really quickly that there are goal payments and reflection payments. The reflection payments used to be called QI cycle incentive that are connected to the QI cycle, and those are available to eligible programs now. Starting July 1st, 2026, increased goal payments will become available, and this helps with larger goals, and there will be a criteria that's set by the accountability team to prioritize programs that are awarded this payment. So we've gave a quick overview of Spark and of the redesign. So now we'll go into the PDG sub-activity. We know that there was interest in learning more about the sub-activity. So this chart took some of the language that was in the PDG application and mapped it out to more concise language that is under Spark activities. And we will be working on adjusting the scope of some of these activities. And while most of the family involvement in executing these activities will come through the accountability team, there will be additional efforts to get families involved in the Find Childcare Oregon recognition enhancements, which is activity C in there. Also, the family perspectives that we gathered through the redesign process will show up in the Spark PDG work in different ways.
Yeah, so we thought it might be helpful since we showed that QI cycle as the framework to kind of tuck in these PDG activities with that cycle to help illustrate that it is helping us build out aspects of the new design for Spark. So we're going to start at the top of the cycle. I know it's not alphabetical, sorry. I matched it alphabetically to the application. So we're going to start at the top of the circle and move clockwise around. So
if you need to, my little arrow.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. So the QI cycle begins with programs gathering data, and that can be informal, and reflecting on current practices. So the data could come from just family conversations, from child assessments, family surveys, classroom observations. And Spark currently offers optional ERS. It's an observation tool called Environment Rating Scale, as well as a tool that's abbreviated to be CLASS. It is an observation tool that looks at teacher-child interactions. So Spark currently offers those two tools as optional tools and provides summary reports after observations are completed. And so programs could use that information when they're choosing their QI goal. Again, this is an optional path. There is an increasing interest in adding pyramid model observation tools like Teapot and Tippy Toes. So Spark is currently piloting those tools in 30 programs in Oregon. That is planned for basically starting, I think, later this month. But what we're going to use PDG funds specifically for is talking to families and providers to better understand which tools they prefer and why, and that can help inform future tool offerings in Spark.
Moving on to where it says set a goal, the PDG funds will also help with building a database of promising practices. And so initially it'll be building the database and having an initial set of practices. We hope that these practices will be linked to potential goals that could provide programs with ideas of practices to implement. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the chat. And then, of course, over time, past PDG, we will have more practices put in there through provider and family input.
Yeah, so moving to the receive funds and or resources box. Specifically, there's a health and safety pilot. I apologize, in the application it said beyond health and safety, but it actually is all about health and safety. So right now, some of the Spark programs, such as those operated by ESDs, are not required to follow the same licensing standards, and therefore don't have to meet the same set of health and safety kind of like compliance threshold that the licensed programs meet in order to join or stay in Spark. So we're going to be using PDG funds to design a health and safety pilot that helps establish some minimum health and safety expectations that all Spark programs must meet to receive funding through Spark for other QI efforts. So quality improvement efforts. Sorry, I go back to my default of acronyms. Apologies. And then during the pilot design process, we're going to be working to define the expectations, estimating the cost for programs, and also identifying resources to support programs in meeting those, because the accountability team feels very strongly we should not have expectations without the adequate support in place to help all providers and programs meet those expectations. So we're hoping that we can, after doing the design, we can ideally go through a tribal consultation process, refine the pilot, and then move the pilot forward. But just to clarify, PDG funds would only be covering the design, not implementation. And then the second little piece on here, Halb has already touched on the increased goal payments, but I am excited to say that we're able to use PDG funds to help us build out the application and awarding process for those increased goal payments. And that also includes $400,000 for us to pay directly to programs that are pursuing larger quality improvement goals that are aligned to family priorities.
Oh, working on goal, and then this part where it says submit a reflection of growth. So Ash already touched on the observation tools. It's just included in this part as well because some programs may choose to request an observation after implementing changes in their program instead of before. And then they can use their observation summary report to document and include in with their reflections.
Sorry, I think I'm next. All right. So recognition on Find Childcare Oregon. So programs do currently receive a certificate when they complete their QI cycle, but TRI is working with a developer to build out a Spark tab, similar to like the safety portal side of things, but it's the Spark journey in Find Childcare Oregon. And that will capture past achievements such as star ratings, but also completed quality improvement cycles. And so they're wrapping up their first design of this tab and will be seeking family input on potential adjustments, not only to the tab, but possibly to the reflection questions we ask, because that will help make sure that we're providing relevant information to families.
And lastly, but also starting over again, PG funds will go towards building a Spark user interface where providers can see their Spark journey documented through the system. It'll also be a place for them to track their QI cycle, and they can also use it to look back on other engagement efforts that they did through Spark QI cycle, and to start again with a new cycle and use it to reflect to start a new goal. So you've heard us talk about the accountability team a lot. Here is a picture of most of them. They have been part of this process since 2023. They're made up of providers and family members who are part of the engagement efforts. Ash talked about that before, and they helped build the redesign plan, and they've worked alongside us at DELC and the Research Institute at Western Oregon University. And we are recruiting for new accountability team members that can serve as just parents/family members of children in childcare. Many of our current members are parents and providers. They serve both roles, and so we're looking for new members that can serve in just that one role and provide that perspective. Maria and Nancy were kind enough to include this recruitment flyer in the last Hubs newsletter. We're extending the deadline to May 10th, 2026. And as a reminder, the accountability team will continue to be involved with the evolution of Spark, including implementing those PDG activities. So please share this with families that you're connected with so that their voices can be included in this process as well. questions?
I did want to call out in the chat that Rod is very affirming of Teapot and Tippy Toes. And that Evan said alignment with existing work and investments is always a plus. Thank you both. And Renee, I see your hands up.
Hi there. Yeah, I'm curious about you use the words programs and providers, and I'm just wondering how the QI cycle works for a family childcare program versus a large center that has multiple classrooms. Is it just one for a large program, is it just counting like once, or is it multiple classrooms within a program could be going through this? I just wanted clarification on kind of the size of
Yes,
program
that's
and how it
an
applies.
excellent question. Spark was set up to be program specific, and so it is encouraging them to share one specific goal, and they could choose to zoom in onto one classroom and share a goal specific to one classroom, or they might choose a goal to change something across the full program. So that is one of like the scope of the change is something that is being considered as potential criteria for the funding for that increased goal payment, because the accountability team does want to make sure that the funds allow programs to make meaningful changes and understand that that looks differently across program sizes. Additionally, programs, they do have a space in the document where they only have to share one goal, but so many of them have multiple goals. And so it actually was expanded to have 5 spots. And so we have some programs that are submitting 5 goals to us as part of their QI cycle.
That's great. I think flexibility is key. Thanks a lot.
Any other questions for the Spark team? If any questions come up after you've after we've signed off for this meeting, please put them in the feedback form, and we'll provide that link soon. I'll just put that in just a minute. Thank you so much, Ash. Thank you so much, Halab. That was really informative, and we'll just keep the conversation going.
Yeah, thank you.
Sounds great. Thank you all.
All right. And now we'll turn it over to Heidi, our fearless facilitator, to take us through kind of where we are now with change in backbone and review process.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Happy sunny spring day. It's good to be with you again. Today, what we'll spend a little time talking about are the backbone change processes, just trying to think through what are some proposed steps in that process and what that might look like. So want to walk through that with you today. We'll walk through each of the proposed comments or processes and then pause and give you an opportunity to just ask questions, share your reactions, and also fill out a Mentimeter survey if you'd prefer to do that. So we just really are looking for your feedback today. And as I walk through this, just want to highlight, this isn't set in stone. This is still in development, and just really glad that we're able to bring this to you and have this conversation before sharing it out broader. All right, should we go ahead and walk through? Kate, thank you so much. So just as a review, when we think about if there were processes for a backbone change, there are really these 4 prompts, 4 ways that would lead to backbone change consideration. First one, Governance Council requests a backbone change. The next one is backbone requests backbone change at the end of a contract. And then this third one is that the backbone requests backbone change mid-contract. And then lastly, DELC identifies compliance issues leading to a backbone change. So we're going to walk through each of these, and here we go. Okay, I'm going to need to pull this up so it's nice and big on my screen so we can read. All right. So this first one is when if the governance council were to request a backbone change. So this is a high-level process, but a little bit more thinking about what these steps might look like. So here, governance council follows their bylaw procedures for conflict mediation and resolution. So governance council follows their procedures. And then governance council, if there is a vote of no confidence, if the governance council votes a no confidence, then notification to DELC, including they would notify DELC, include their governance council meeting minutes with the vote results. DELC would confirm they received the notification, and then following the arrow down, DELC would schedule a support meeting with the governance council chairs, the hub director, the backbone leaders, with DELC representatives to understand governance council's rationale and provide some clarity of rules and the grant agreement. Then DELC would provide, again, clarity of the processes and rules as the backbone identifies potential remedies. The backbone presents potential remedies to the governance council. And then the governance council meets to clarify, discuss those potential remedies for up to 90 business days. If an extension is needed, then governance council could contact DELC. Governance council reflects, kind of determines if they will pursue a backbone change or continue to work on the potential remedies. So we can go to that next slide. Thanks, Kate. So this next slide is then continuing this process. Governance council would conduct a vote and inform DELC as to whether they will pursue a change in the backbone or will work with the backbone to address and correct the circumstances causing that lack of confidence. The proposed thinking is that governance council would conduct this vote within 90 business days of the remedies being presented. So governance council then would notify DELC of the decision. If governance council votes to continue working with the backbone, they would notify DELC of that proposed timeline. Or after good faith efforts are made by all parties, remedies cannot be found or are unsuccessful to address the lack of confidence, governance council will inform DELC of their decision to proceed with a backbone change. I just wanted to note, like, what do good faith efforts mean? Communication or meetings between governance council and the backbone entity, a commitment between the governance council and the backbone entity to address potential remedies, like, for example, a signed MOU. So if here we are again back, if governance council will informs DELC of their decision to proceed with a backbone change, then it would go to an RFA. And DELC would inform hub community partners of backbone change in the process for service continuity. Okay, that was a lot, so let's pause there. Okay. Oh yeah, great question, Abby. I see your note in chat. I'll go ahead and read it, Nancy. Before I read that, my question to you all is and Mentimeter is here, there's the link, is what questions do you have or what suggestions do you have? And Abby, I see your note, clarifying question. Notification to DELC would be done by someone on the governance council, not the hub director, right? That would be my interpretation of what we're saying here. And I'm looking, Nancy and Maria, just real quick to you. Is that your assumption as well?
Right. I think the governance council chair would be the one to send that notification, but I think that's a good flag. We can make that clear in the process.
Great, thank you. What questions about this process or prompt are coming up for you? Or suggestions? I appreciate the suggestion for clarity. Oh, Mentimeter. I love Mentimeter. Okay, let's see. All right, so I'm seeing, would governance chairs and or hub director participate in reviewing the RFA applications? Great question. we've consulted procurement on this, and I'm double checking here, Maria and Nancy, and Carla, whoever, and Becky. My understanding is that I'm not sure if through procurement that's possible. And I'm checking to you all. Thanks, Maria.
Right. The guidance that we received is that it would be an internal group for DELC. Now we are exploring ways that maybe we can implement a level of a letter of support from Governance Council that would be a part of the packet. But right now, as far as the review panel, it would be DELC folks.
Okay, thanks for that question. Okay, just clarity around the hub director's role in each part of this, as the middle is complicated. Really understand that. Also, that it be laid out just like this is in a handout that can be shared. You got it. Yeah, great suggestion. Thank you for that. And if you see anything in here about the hub director's role that you feel like would help with clarity, please share. It's so beneficial. All right, moving to the right. This seems like a lengthy process. What do you see as the shortest timeline, longest timeline? I think that's why we put the 90-day, there were some 90 days in there. I will say that there's been some just in discussions that I've had with many folks that the hope would be that it not last much longer than 6 months. However, feel like each situation is a little bit different and unique. And Maria and Nancy, feel free to weigh in if I'm off.
I'm actually curious what others think about the timeline and if that 6 months seems about right. If we are anticipating 3 to 6 months, or if you're thinking more or less. Renee?
It just seems like if there is if this is being initiated from the Governance Council, that it probably is really a sense of urgency, like something is really, really not working and impeding the work of the early learning system in that region, and that 6 months could seem like a lifetime. And also understanding that things can't happen overnight, but that 6 months could really, really be tough.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you, Renee.
I think one thing to flag would be, and correct me if I'm now getting it wrong, but if the Governance Council is initiating the change, they're not required to spend 6 months. So they have it's more like an outside window of time. Like they have up to a certain amount of time before a decision has to be made, basically to move forward with a separation or to continue in the current relationship. So they would have some autonomy in having a shorter timeline if they're just really seem like there's no path to remedy the current relationship or dynamic.
Yeah, that's right, Becky. I think we also thought about some folks who already would feel that the good faith efforts have been made prior to even getting to the point of the vote. And so I think we really did put that up to 90 business days for discussing the potential remedies, but we know that it's going to be really just dependent on the situation and what is leading to that. But I think also to your point, Renee, where things are going really, really wrong, there is also another one where we as DELC, if we're also in agreement and there are some things that you are in default of the grant agreement and things are going really, really wrong, that's going to be on a different timeline as well.
Okay, shall we move forward? Would DELC decide if good faith efforts have been made? I'm not real sure how to answer that one. I think go ahead, Nancy.
Yeah, I think we would look at those two elements that you called out in the slides regarding good faith efforts. And I think we would, especially the system analyst who supports that hub, would be able to decide if good faith efforts have been made. That's my thinking.
But
So
al-
basically, demonstration of communication or meetings that the Governance Council and Backbone have had and what other documents have existed between the two.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Wouldn't we want the DELC director to be aware of a backbone change request, not just the Governance Council? Wouldn't we want the DELC director? I'm not clear. Wouldn't we want the DELC director to be aware of a backbone change request, not just the Governance Council?
So Heidi, that was mine. It's supposed to say the hub director, not the DELC
Gotcha.
director. Yeah.
That's
Then I
so
couldn't go
helpful.
back and edit, so.
It's okay. Yes. I think the assumption, go ahead, Maria. Go ahead.
Right. I think here is where if it was already brought to the governance council meeting and we, for purposes of the governance council, the hub director is part of that governance council. So our hope would be that the hub director would have been involved in that meeting where it came to a vote. But we can also look and see if there's some language that we can add in there that would make that clearer to know that, yes, the hub director should be absolutely informed of what's happening and before that comes to DELC, for sure.
Yeah, that was just my concern is the hub director being blindsided by it. I just want to make sure it was on their radar ahead of time before the request went to the DELC.
Great.
Right. Are we expected to share this with our councils? What kind of engagement is expected? We're going to talk about next steps at the end of our time together today. So if you can hold that thought, because we would like to be, we've had conversations about being supportive to that request around sharing information out to everyone. So hold that thought, if you will. How specifically would DELC get the word out to local communities ahead of any potential damage? Go ahead, Nancy.
No, I'm
Okay.
just nodding my head like that's a great question that I feel we would benefit from exploring a little bit more. And I'm wondering if whoever wrote that or anybody else has any thoughts on that.
I'll take ownership for the comment, but I don't have any answers. And just, yeah, it said that I was just reflecting that DELC said that they would get the word out to the local communities and just kind of wondering how, and like just being really, I mean, maybe it should come from DELC, maybe it shouldn't, I'm not sure, but I think you have to be super, super careful because ultimately that hub is going to be adopted by another backbone, likely in the community. And how do you, in our small communities, like people talk and like, oh, you don't want them, that's damaged goods. And, just like it would be like in small communities with passing a girlfriend around, the group. And I would just encourage you to be super thoughtful about how that plays out.
I agree. I think
Yeah.
there needs to be some definite partnership for this piece. I know that there's a layer where we need to really be mindful of the procurement process. And once it's released as an RFA, there is a single point of contact on our end, but we're really hoping that leading up to that point, we can really be mindful about how we're doing that outreach for the community. But I think it's a really good flag that we can think about discussing further as a group. And I think this is where we would really lean on Governance Council, the hub director, to really get that word out for the local communities.
Shara, thank you for that. Yeah, it's a really, we may want to even put in some clarifying language around partnership, as you just noted, Maria. Okay, this makes me nervous as an employee of my backbone. Would it put my job at risk? What about my staff? None of us work for DELC, so if there is a backbone issue, our jobs would be on the line. Yeah. I understand that nervousness. I don't know if Maria or Nancy you want to add, or Becky want to add in any other thoughts.
I think this is a piece that we've really been thinking a lot about because we know that it's been raised for us throughout the process, and it's been something that we really were hoping we could have a little bit more. We know the importance of having that continuity, but really at this point, it is something that we've really been discussing and thinking of ways that we could encourage that. But we really cannot require staffing decisions as part of the backbone change at this time. We think that there can be a lot of thoughtful encouragement for that transition planning, but we do know that that's not a piece that we can mandate. And really thinking about what could that collaboration look like. But I think it is important to name that that is a piece that we would not be able to require as part of the backbone change.
Maria, thank you for that. Okay, can we slide down a little bit, Kate?
Yes, it's not, oh, there it goes. It wasn't
Okay.
letting me scroll, but now it is. So
Okay. Let's see. Who from Delk would be on the review panel? I do not. I'm trying to recall what procurement had advised.
I think we were told at this point that typically the review panel consists of about 3 to 5 people. So I think you could expect to see obviously the hub system analyst, and we would have Carla bringing that fiscal perspective as well. And then I think we would just bring in other folks as there is capacity, but also bringing a lens for the community and the region.
One other thing I wanted to note around the review process that is in some of our, we had discussed as well, is that Governance Council, if there is an agreed vote on a potentially new applying backbone, could include a letter of support with that applicant's application. We talked about strategies that where the Governance Council can provide written support if there is a Governance Council preference of a new backbone. So just wanted to highlight that, and Nancy Maria, let me know if I'm again off on my memory there. Yeah.
No, I think we have been talking about that letter of recommendation as a way to get, community feedback. I wanted to read a couple of comments from Danny. I think this is a super valid concern about the staff transitioning or not. Not my comment, but a concern I share, and it's maybe harder for me hearing that once this process starts, the hub director is not really involved at any point. Do you mean once the RFA process starts, Danny, or prior to that? Well, we can get back to that. Let's see, and Rod is saying, I could be wrong, but my understanding is that any state grant that changes backbones, the new backbone has to retain staff at current compensation for at least 1 year. I don't know if we're aware of that. That might be something that we can check in with DOJ or procurement. I'm glad you flagged that.
Yeah, right.
Nancy, that was something I got from our ESD superintendent, because they've had some other situations where they were asked to take on something else, and honestly, they didn't want to retain those staff, so they chose not to pick up, whatever grant.
Oh, interesting. Thanks for that, Rod. We'll explore that a little bit more.
Yeah, this is definitely still on our short list of areas to continue exploring, or what are the different opportunities or ways that we can support staff continuity in a transition.
Oh, and Danny, you were just saying just about the staffing and risking our employment. Thank you. And Chris shared, could hub directors get whistleblower protection, assuming there is something egregious that is precipitation of the change? That's interesting. I don't think we've considered that, but I feel like that's another thing we can put down for further exploration.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chris.
Chris, do you mean if the ask for a change was coming not from the governance council, but was coming from, I guess when you say was coming from the hub director via another route, or
Well, I'm just envisioning worst case scenario, not that anything like this, I have knowledge of anything like this, but suppose there was, a backbone that was doing some sort of shifty financial stuff. And the hub director went to the governance, and the governance had a no confidence vote. I mean, it seems to me that would be something that might fall under whistleblower if the hub director is informing the governance of something that is happening in the backbone that is causing this break. And then the governance proceeds with a no confidence vote.
so a protection from any retaliation, basically from the
Correct.
backbone.
Being fired or retaliated against, because the backbone is still your employer.
Yeah, I
Thank you,
appreciate the question. I think it's something that we'll just have to explore what the options are there to lend any protection to a hub director that finds themselves in that position.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Chris. Evan is saying hub staff evaluation would be a separate process coinciding with the backbone evaluation process in this scenario.
It's a question. I'm clarifying because looking at this, it seems like they're together. And if the governance council is the one initiating the response, their concerns may be more with organizational constraints of the backbone and not the staff performance. And so just being clear that those two things could be disentangled through the process. And I'm sure that Nancy, y'all, that would be taken into consideration. I'm just naming it.
Thanks. I appreciate you calling that out. Let's see, Rod commented, I think all of this is a great reason to not share any of this with our governance council or backbone until the whole process is finalized. Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, we're working through this and we're really relying on your feedback. So things could be changing as it evolves and as we keep presenting this to you. So I think that's mindful, planful. And Renee is saying 100%. Another comment from Renee, because of the complexity of the Delk Backbone Governance Council relationship, this seems like a big gray area with a million legal questions associated with a backbone change. We need an employment law consultation. Yeah.
All right. Shall we keep going on the questions? Nancy, thank you for that. Kate, I think there's a question if we can just slide a little bit that I missed. Oh, yeah. Do backbones have to be included in the initial meeting with governance? It seems like this may be beneficial to have governance alone. I think that our intention and hope in the conversations we had was that no, they don't have to be included. It just could depend on the situation. Could be dependent. But there definitely is some value, especially if a governance council would like to have that, to be free to share openly. Okay. Prior to jumping out of a hard situation, I don't want to know what DELC is. I would want to know what DELC is doing to support salary equity if we did not move to another backbone so we don't lose our staff. Prior to jumping out of a hard situation, I would want to know what DELC is doing to support salary equity if we did move to another backbone so we don't lose our staff. I think that falls into a similar vein of, you know, what DELC can do and can't do. And there's a need for additional clarity. I think I appreciate that in that additional layer of question around staff. Nancy, Maria, Becky, feel free to jump in too. All right, I'm curious to know more about how do potential backbones know they may be considered? Can there be something like the CE eligible provider list?
Sorry, I thought I just talked for a second and thought I had taken myself off mute, but I was just agreeing with you, Heidi. Sorry, it's just my mouth moving.
Thanks, Becky. Okay, thanks for this.
That one was mine about the CE eligible providers list. It took me a long time to wrap my head around that process, but I really now understand why they did it. And I don't know, I mean, most of us in the room know that whole eligible provider list. And it just seems like, gosh, if we could figure out who are the eligible backbones, that would be helpful, rather than like, in this situation, if there was going to be a divorce, you know, really looking at who are the eligible backbones, and how do you start like working on those relationships? Heidi, you know, when we did go through our backbone change, you know, it was very challenging to get people to the table. We did have people to the table, and you know, no one took the bait. They didn't know what they'd be getting, but you know, really, it just kind of landed where it landed. And so, like, I think there needs to be a little bit more education in the community about what it is to be a backbone. I don't think current backbones even know what it means to be a backbone. And so I don't know how you go and look for a new backbone without them knowing what it takes to be a backbone. And I also, you know, you can't look for a new boyfriend if you're already married. So I get confused about that process.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point just around that process piece, how maybe putting some clarifying information out about, or at least having some clarifying information about the role of the backbone. Yeah. And I think that partnership piece also, again, emphasizing the partnership piece between DELC and the Governance Council when they're in that process, when they're in this process, I guess. Because, you know, to have that local leadership. All right, thanks, Shira. This is similar. I still feel like we cannot expect backbones to fully understand their roles without a guide and an orientation first, or at least simultaneously. All right, thank you for that. That's affirming to. Okay, I do appreciate that you're involving us in this conversation. I know this is messy and not easy, so thank you. Could there be some sort of transfer of leadership during the resolution process, such as DELC takes over as the backbone while the hub is working through this process? I don't know if Becky or Maria or Nancy, you want to weigh in here. I think from our discussions, we've had a lot of conversation around the role of DELC, and the role of DELC really being kind of the grant holder and the communicator around what the rules and grant agreements are. I don't know if you have additional thoughts you want to add in,
I would just say it hasn't come up in this specific question about Delk taking over as a backbone. Just off the cuff, I would say no, probably not, but that's not a very well-informed response. I think I just need to take that back, and actually consult on that to give a very well thought out, backed up answer. I appreciate the question though.
Thanks, Becky. Okay, I'll go through these last two and then we can jump, Danny, to your question here. I think the hub director should be included, but not the middle woman or man, or they. Please keep in mind that often the backbone entity is the director's boss. Absolutely. Yeah. When you're saying you think the hub director should be included, can you clarify included in what?
What a surprise. It's me again.
Kira.
I
Wonderful.
think included in the process,
Mhm.
informed, but not the in-between. Not the place where the governance council goes to talk about the backbone entity, and the backbone place where they come and talk about the governance council, and certainly not in the place to relay information to each other. Because if the governance council is having a concern, or if Delk is having a concern, it's not for the hub director to then go to the backbone entity and say they have these concerns and take that information in. Again, with my model of the parents, right? Like we're not going to tell, little Johnny that mommy and daddy are getting divorced. Like I think that's where we need to bring in the marriage counselor to be that liaison, and not not put it on the director to be the communicator between all the parties.
Yeah. Great. Thank you for that clarification, Shira. Yeah. 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 Nancy and Maria and Becky, feel free to weigh in again if you have additional thoughts. Okay. This feels so complicated and feels so dependent on each situation. I can imagine how difficult it would be to develop a global process. Yep. Okay. Thank you for that. Great. Go ahead, Nancy.
Oh, I just wanted to make sure that you saw Danny's comment.
Some of our councils are already partway down this path without knowing what's next. So waiting is also problematic.
Danny, can you remind us what that was in response to? Was there something about waiting was that about the timeline?
Yeah, so, and I apologize. We are sort of having a conversation in the chat that is adjacent to the conversation that we're also having off of mute. So apologies. I'm trying to participate in both conversations. But someone mentioned above, like, it seems like we shouldn't share this with our governance councils or our backbones yet, because it feels like there's still a lot of unknowns and things feel like, maybe there's still some legal questions, maybe there's some employment law at play here within our backbones. And like, I can have a million questions about the way this would play out in my backbone, because everyone who's employed on my team is protected by a union that has bumping rights. So they have to be placed somewhere else in the county if the hub isn't there anymore and they don't go with the hub. So there's like 50 million ways that this is super complicated. And my council is one of those that sort of feels like they were already in the remediation process. And so I can't exactly wait to share this process with them, because they're already partway down the road and waiting to hear what they're supposed to do to make sure that they're following the rules. And so I really can't wait to share the information with them, even if we don't have all the answers. And then it also feels weird that, like, well, I might have to and somebody else might not share this yet. because it's not, so I'm trying to just figure out with everyone in the chat, like what feels right and like the best thing to do. Protecting my people is super important. I could care about myself, but I have staff to be concerned about. And what's best for the hub is still a thing, but in this strange way, even in the hub rules that were just written, like it very much says the hub director is the person between DELC and the backbone and the governance council and the governance council and the backbone. And so unfortunately the role is the middle.
Okay. Well, I think especially if we think about this process, if you have suggestions where you feel like it should be highlighted to, create any separation, especially even after today, if you have thoughts. Thank you for that, Danny. I know that we don't have a lot of time left, so this one was the most complex, I would say. Let's go ahead and walk through the next one if you're all comfortable. And again, feel free to keep your thoughts and comments coming. So this is the backbone, when the backbone requests a backbone change at the end of a contract. And this would be the backbone notifies DELC through written notice with a request here of 90-day notification at a minimum. DELC reviews the notification, schedules a support meeting with Governance Council Chair, Backbone leaders, Hub Director, and DELC reps. At this meeting, it's to understand rationale, hear potential options, and begin transition planning. DELC offers support and TA through clarification of rules and the grant agreements. There would be an outline of a plan for transition and to determine what is needed to fulfill the grant agreement until the grant is terminated. This includes identification of strategies for service continuity. The Backbone Governance Council and DELC confirm the date, the end of the contract date. Written notice formalizing the end of the contract date between the Backbone and DELC is completed 30 days following this support meeting. And then DELC informs Hub community partners of the Backbone change and process for certain services continuity. We can probably add here in partnership with the Governance Council again. And probably Hub Director as well, but in partnership. And then an RFA is released. And I think that's all for this one. Yes. What questions do you have? What suggestions do you have? And there's Mentimeter as well here. Yeah, Rod.
Hey Heidi, I'm trying to find it, but I think our current grant agreement says Backbone only has to give 30 days notice.
Is that right? Okay.
I know that I'm trying to find it in the grant agreement, but I know that first kind of bullet thing said 90 days, which would be nice.
Yeah, thanks, Rod. We can confirm that. True. Yeah. Yeah, Renee.
Could you put that slide back up for a second? I'm trying to figure out with that whether it's 30-day clock or 90-day clock based on Rod's comment. I'm curious at what point during that clock the RFA is released. Because it seems like as soon as possible would be really important, and it wasn't quite clear for me anyway on that slide.
Right.
Like how quickly that could happen.
Yeah, Renee, that's probably a point of clarification too.
Yeah.
Getting that timeline.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, great. Okay.
Yeah, and I would anticipate that unless there's in the conversation around TA and support, there's the, identification of something that would change the decision of the backbone, that we would be trying to expedite that process to identify somebody for continuity as, expediently as we could. Unless Maria and Nancy have other thoughts.
I just wanted to hop in really quick to clarify that on the agreement, the 30-day advance notice is from the agency. So DELC has 30 days. The agreement doesn't specify a date period from the grantee side or from the mutual side. So you were right, Rod. It does say 30 days, but it's just it was on DELC specifically. It has a couple different categories of when each individual group can or can't request termination and the time periods.
Thanks, Carla. I'll quit looking now.
Okay. Right.
There's the Mentimeter link again. I haven't seen any responses come through yet. If I do, I'll share my screen again.
And I see Chris's comment. I realize that next biennium it will be easier. However, the hub contract ends September 30, 2026, 2027, and coordinated enrollment, preschool promise. Let me back up. However, the hub contract ends September 30, 2026, and coordinated enrollment preschool promise continues until June 30th, 2027. So which contract period?
In other words, if the same backbone is giving notice for two
Right.
contracts. Got it. Mhm. I think it would be for both, for both. In other words, I mean, we need to determine, there's only so much of a recourse one has, but if, what it's saying is that we would want it to be at least 90 days before whichever contract ends sooner.
And that would only really come into play, I guess, for the next year, because starting June of 27, both grants will be on the exact same schedule.
Okay, great. Okay.
And then Danny brings up such a good comment. That's an interesting thing about the separate contracts. If the hub itself moves, does the coordinated enrollment contract automatically follow, or could a backbone decide to still do coordinated enrollment? What a tangled web we weave. My goodness. Thanks for surfacing that. And then Rod says that would get really messy if a backbone wanted to keep coordinated enrollment and not hub, or vice versa, or both grants tied together.
Good question.
In my mind, with the current model of the way that coordinated enrollment is carried out, and the responsibilities under the grant agreement, they would be together. And we would have, if the coordinated enrollment redesign ends up dramatically changing the way that coordinated enrollment is executed, then we would have to, I think, maybe revisit what that means for the grant agreement responsibilities and that question. But right now they seem pretty tied together. What do you think, Rod? Wait, was it Rod?
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, they're tied together. I just didn't know if, like, legally they are tied together. I don't know. Or if that needs to be addressed in this process.
Yeah.
That we're not, because I mean, we're talking about hub coordination, we're talking about coordinated enrollment, we're talking about KPI, we're talking about Birth to 5, we're talking about Title 4B. Um, so in this process, are they all going to be tied together? I just thinking out loud.
Great points. That's probably a place to add some clarity as well and get some consultation on internally at DELC. Okay. Okay, shall we keep going? Becky, did you want to dive in?
I was just laughing at Rod's comment, which I just saw.
Yes. Thank you for the messiness. We're right in the messy middle. Let's go ahead and pop through the next two. The next one is when a hub backbone requests a backbone change mid-contract, not at the end of the contract, mid-contract. So it's very similar. Backbone notifies DELC through written notice detailing concerns and reasoning. Again, wanting 90 days notification at a minimum. DELC reviews the notification, schedules a support meeting with Governance Council Chair, Backbone Leaders, Hub Director, and DELC reps. At this meeting, it's to understand rationale, hear potential options, determine if there is mutual consent, begin transition planning. DELC offers support and TA through clarification of rules and grant agreement. Then the Backbone Governance Council Hub Director outline a plan for transition to determine what is needed to fulfill the grant agreement until terminated. This includes identification of strategies for service continuity. Backbone Governance Council and DELC confirm the end of the contract date. Written notice formalizing the end of the contract date between Backbone and DELC is completed 30 days following that original support meeting. DELC informs Hub community partners of backbone change and process for service continuity in partnership, and the RFA is released. What questions, what suggestions do you have here? Shall we review the last one? And then, so we've gone through it all. And then again, I think meant to, yes. Okay, let's go. All right. This, and many of your comments I know will carry over into all of the processes. So really appreciative of them. This last one is a prompt. Let's see, popping up there. This last one is the prompt for when DELC identifies compliance issues leading to a backbone change. So the process would begin notification to the Backbone Governance Council and the Hub Director with documentation of issues. For example, notice of non-compliance, fiscal risk assessment, corrective action plan, breach of contract. So immediate termination would occur if the grantee is in default of the grant agreement, such as misuse of funds or defaults on the grant agreement, such as bankruptcy, or if following a 6 to 12 month period of TA, the corrective action plan is not fulfilled. DELC then would provide written communication to the governance chair, Backbone leaders, Hub Director to confirm termination of the contract. DELC schedules a meeting with Governance Council Chair, Backbone leaders, and Hub Director to outline process and identify strategies for service continuity. DELC informs Hub community partners of backbone change and process for service continuity, and it releases an RFA. There's probably some partnership here, dependent upon the situation. If there is a Governance Council, if there is a director, depending. And then the RFA is released. So what questions or suggestions do you have in the last few minutes? And Mentimeter is up too. All right. I believe that there will still be opportunity for feedback and thoughts after today. So, Kate, how about we share next steps with everyone? Thank you for that, Kate. You've been awesome. So next steps are in the June meeting, because y'all are connecting in May. In the June meeting, would like to talk about the review criteria. The review criteria for sort of that more comprehensive monitoring process. Approximately, we've talked about every 4 years, but we'll talk about that with you in June. Really anchoring that criteria to the rules and the grant agreements. So we'll be discussing that in June, getting your thoughts and feedback. And then we'd like to also hold a webinar in June to share, some of these processes that the backbone change process that's maybe a little bit more refined, and the review process with Governance Council, Backbone, and Hub directors, everybody, so that everybody can hear the similar information. All partners can hear, all players, not partners, these 3 players, entities can hear the similar information at that time. Okay. I think I'm done.
Heidi, you did an amazing job facilitating all this and getting through all those slides in your allotted time. Thank you so much. I dropped in the Hub meeting exit survey. If you have additional questions that you think about later, please put those in there, submit those, and Marie and I will take a look at those and add that to all of our other questions and all the good comments and feedback you've provided. Next up, we have kind of an optional office hours that we're tagging on to this Hub monthly meeting. And we've got Dana here to give us a preschool promise update. We know some of you won't be able to stay put, but we'll keep the recording on so you can catch up with everything that happens in this next half hour. I think that's it. Heidi, thanks again. Appreciate your support, facilitation. And Dana, I'll pass it over to you now.
Awesome. Thank you. Good afternoon. Dana Young here, Preschool Promise Program Manager. Nice to see many of you. I wanted to go ahead and just come and do more of an open, office hours for all of you to go ahead and we just released a new process for Preschool Promise, and there's a lot of excitement, right, with having the opportunity to go ahead and ask for additional slots. And then at the same time, as with everything, it's a new process, and then there's also some questions that come up with that. I did wanted to also let you all know that by the end of this week, we're hoping to go ahead and send in an FAQ document. So this is also a great space for you to go ahead and, ask some questions. And if I'm not able to answer, we'll be able to go ahead and address those in the FAQ document. In addition to that, because this is not an RFA, it's more of a competitive application that Preschool Promise has right now for hubs, is that you are able to go ahead and request a meeting. If you want to go ahead and if you have a specific questions about the process, you're not really sure, or you're not really sure, hey, am I still eligible? I'm not really sure about that. You are able to do that. So as long as that is an invite to all of you, if you want a meeting, you can go ahead and send an email to Mel, and then she'll connect with me, and then we can do that. You don't have to have a meeting. It's up to you. But if you do want to, that will be the process to go to do that. So let's go ahead and just get started. I figure that I'll just go over some of the slides that we can some of the slides that we shared during the last meeting. So we'll go ahead and get started with that. Let me take a look here. Okay, and Nancy, can you see the screen there?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good. So we're doing this very, very new process is what we're calling our cross-region slot reallocation, in which we're really trying to look at preschool promise maybe a little bit different than what we have in the past, right? We're really trying to go ahead and be responsive to many of the feedback that many of you have shared with us about like, Dana, I get it. We have that our slot amount for our hub region, but we have families waiting now, right? And then we also have heard that there may be other regions where there may be some barriers to us being able to go ahead and reach like full enrollment. So this was our way of being responsive to some of the hot feedback and introduce a new process where we are able to go ahead and move slots from one region to another. So really looking into that community need. There's also a lot of questions about preschool promise, right? Going back to like what is that when we are holding these slots in a region that may be experiencing some barriers to getting fully enrolled, like how can we be super responsive and really good stewards of the funds and also be responsive to the kiddos who are maybe waiting in a different hub region. All hubs are eligible to go ahead and apply. This is a new process for us. So you're kind of coming along with us and we're going to go ahead and learn a lot from this new process. In addition to that, as we look at reallocating or adding slots in a different hub region, it's super important for us to go ahead and acknowledge like what will be the impact with other publicly funded programs, right? If we do end up adding more slots to one hub region than another. So just kind of overarching like guiding principles of like really coming back and being responsive to what hubs have shared with us and saying like, hey, I heard that you may not be able to fill the slots at that other hub region, and I have children waiting here, Dana. Like, how can we meet the needs of those children waiting? So this was our cross-region slot allocation process. So we opened this application right now. Simple application. You all should have the link. It was shared I sent an email to all of the hubs that get the preschool promise update from Mel. And then I know that she's going to be working on updating your hub dashboard too. So we have this application and the application open on April 1st and it's going to be closing on May the 15th. And we're looking to go ahead and make final decisions by June 1st. And why that kind of turnaround? We wanted to allow for 45 days for you all to go ahead and really think with your partners and really think about like, what does this look like for my hub region? Do I have the capacity? Do I have the need? What does the last thing that we want to do is put, additional stress on your day-to-day work. So we are looking for a 45-day kind of process where this application is going to be open. Nancy, were you going to add something?
I was just going to
Yes,
ask you to
go
put
ahead.
that in presentation mode if you don't mind.
How do we do such thing?
You should have a toolbar at the top.
Okay. Layout.
I think that Dana's looking at a PDF, Nancy.
I think
Yeah.
if you do the little plus to zoom, that might help.
Okay, hold on.
Make it, yeah.
Oh, right there?
Yeah.
Okay. This is where maybe we should have Kate review
Little
this.
smaller.
Can you see it right there?
That's great.
And
Thanks, Dana.
scroll
Sorry for
down
the
a tiny
noise.
bit.
Yeah, if you scroll a little bit down.
Okay, let's go ahead and scroll down. I should have just sent this presentation to Kate. This would have happened. Okay, is that better?
That's better.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for flagging that for me, Nancy. Okay, so we have 45 days where the application is going to be open. One of the things is why that June timeline? You may be asking yourselves, like, why June, Dana? Why not later on? And one of the reasons is because you need to go ahead and submit your slot allocation form by the end of June, right? That's a deliverable that you have. So we wanted to make sure that you knew whether you were going to be getting additional slots or not by the time you had to go ahead and submit that form to us, letting us know what is your priority within your hub region, right? Based on the amount of slots that you have. The other thing that's happening right now is that we have providers that may be reducing their slot amounts, they may be changing in some of those pieces. So one of the things that we have here is that, you know, we're really looking like in the application is asking you for information about how many children are actively waiting for preschool promise services, right? And these are children that have been deemed eligible for preschool promise, but we don't have spaces to be able to go ahead and put them within the hub region. It is asking you some information about what is that, how many providers do you have in your eligible provider list? And do they have a wait list? Are they meeting the needs? Or do we need to look into maybe an RFA, right, for your hub region? What would that look like as well? We are looking to go ahead and place children no later than September 1st. You know, once again, going back to that guiding principle as far as like making sure that we get the slots utilized as fast as possible, right? So that's one thing. Now, since I sent the email, one of the number one questions that has been coming up is like, where's this 77 coming from? Where did this come from? If we remember last summer, we ended up doing some budget. You know, some of the slots weren't able to go ahead and get reallocated, right, back in community because of some budget restructuring that was going on. So our total amount for preschool promise across the state was the 5,098 slots. Where this 77 slots are coming from is they're actually coming from our Multnomah Early Learning Hub, who's currently doing, you know, there's more options for families. So we're looking to go ahead and reallocate those slots to a different hub region where we know there's a wait list, right? Where we know that there's children waiting for services. So I think, you know, overall, to go ahead and summarize where the slots coming from, they're coming from Multnomah, right? And that has also prompted some questions from like, hey, I heard that this grantee in my hub region is no longer going to be a provider, Dana. Are you going to add that now to the 77 and is it going to be put up for competition for everyone? And the answer is no. If you currently have grantees, unless you've talked to me, so, you know, in Multnomah, we're doing something a little bit different, right? These slots are becoming available for other hub regions, but for your hub region right now, if you have a grantee that's making changes, that goes back to your hub region unless we go through a full process of like technical assistance, RFAs, and all of that process in order for us to be able to, we're just not able to reallocate, right? But I don't see that happening. And that is why, you know, super important for us to go ahead and stay in communication, right? But I know that most recently, within the past week, there's been some changes in some hub regions. And I think with this process, it created some alarm like, oh no, are you now adding those to the 77? And once again, I want to make it clear the answer is no. Our goal is to go ahead and still maintain those slots within your hub region and reallocate them. I am going to be working with Mel, so we're going to be sending a quick little email for all of you so we can give you the number of slots available for reallocation year to date, what we have as of right now, and then also any slots that may come available for reallocation because maybe some of your grantees are exiting out or they're looking for a lower amount or something's happening. So you get that total amount. And for many of you, it's going to be zero. There's not, you know, slots available for reallocation. So, but I do want to make sure that you get all the information. So you will be getting an email there from from Mel or I as far as like what your numbers are up until now. I do want to make sure that I allow time for like questions and answers, and I am gonna ask for some of my CST team to help me with the chat because I wasn't looking at the chat. So if one of you can help me with that, that would be really helpful. But yes, the number one question was, where did the 77 come from? They've come from our Multnomah Early Learning Hub, who were restructuring and all of that. So now those have become available. Now, when you're thinking about, should I apply? Like, is it only 77? Should I even apply for this? And I will say, yes, you should apply because this is your moment to really go ahead and show us what is the need of Preschool Promise within your hub region. We don't, there may be more slots that become available. Things are changing, right? Like on a month to month, literally like by month by month. More grantees may be exiting out, there may be reducing. So I do think that it's really important for you all to go ahead and really take the time to apply and, and really share what is the need of Preschool Promise within your hub region. Super important there. Now, another question that came up was like, but what happens if I need an RFA? Should I still apply? Should I not? You should still apply. We did leave a space there where you can say, hey, I have a high need, but I am going to need an RFA. And that will be for us internally to go ahead and talk to our procurement team as far as capacity and how we can, make that work if we're able to make that work. So definitely don't let that stop you from applying for this opportunity if that's something that you want to do.
We've got about
there-
5 questions. Do you let
Let's
me know when
tackle
you're
them
ready?
right now. Yes, go
Okay.
ahead, Nancy.
All right, here we
Give
go.
me the first one.
From Chris at
Mhm.
Lane County, what happens if we don't fill by September 1? We have 3 new providers on our eligible list and the application is now open. So if we allocate slots to new providers, families don't even know about them yet.
That's a great question. The goal is to go ahead and get them placed as soon as possible. So we would be in that case, we will probably need to go ahead and see like why aren't we able to go ahead and reallocate and work with you, right? I will say go ahead and apply thinking of that deadline and that timeline, right? That is our goal. But I would assume that at that point we will need to go ahead and work with you. There's also 2 things there, Chris, that I always think about, like as a hub region, you have your total amount of slots to fill. So while that marketing and advertising may not be as targeted as we will want to in saying we have slots at Nancy's, you would at least know we have this many slots in community at these different types of setting. Does that make sense? So sometimes that does help when it comes to placement, but that's definitely something that we can go ahead and work with our hubs individually if we get to that that little crossroads there. Okay, thank you.
Okay, the next one from Shira.
Next question.
Do you see this as only being offered now, or will this be offered periodically?
I can definitely see this being periodically, right? Because things change, right? And this is our first go around and we're going to learn so much. And I think that while right now, most of the hub regions, with the exception of one right now, we're able to do the reallocation, right? But there may be a point where we're just not able to fill the slots. And that's why I do want to go ahead and make it clear, like, all of the slots, our commitment is so they can stay within your hub region, but we will be working with you if we come to a point where we've exhausted RFAs, eligible provider lists, and we're still not able to reach low enrollment, then we need to go ahead and be responsive to families in other hub regions. But right now, I do see this definitely being periodically for sure.
Thanks, Dana. Rod asks, I'm curious how this was messaged out to Preschool Promise grantees. We had one click on the smart sheet and tried to apply, then contacted us for support on how to apply.
Yeah, that you and me both, Rod. I think that this was something we we need to go ahead and send a message to our grantees, because in our effort of like being super transparent and say, hey, this is a process that's going on in your hub region, so they can also be thinking partners with you all, right? And saying, hey, Rod, I have like 100 families waiting. Let's go at this together. I'll own it. We could have done a little bit different on our Gov delivery to them. So we will be sending more clarification that at this time, there's no action needed on behalf of the grantees, other than maybe collaborating with you, right? And sharing that need. So, yes.
Okay, Danny asks, do you know when that email about what's left in allocation for our region will come?
Yes. Oh, I'm hoping to go ahead and get that sent down by tomorrow, because for most of you, you don't have that many slots available, right? Or any, really. So by tomorrow, Danny, you should be getting that email. I'm looking at Danny here on the screen. I can see her. She's down here. So yes, by close of business day tomorrow. Next question.
Thanks, Dana. From Rod, thank you for the clarification on where the slots came from. People have been asking me. Great. And Abby says, I will watch the end of this recording. Oh, but she wasn't able to attend. And then Rod shares, thank you, Dana. We explained it to them, but they were confused.
Yes, I apologize on that confusion. Like I said, in our effort of informing them, I think we could have sent it a little bit different and explained that there was no action needed on their end, but that also shows they're excited, right? They're excited for this opportunity coming. So yeah, lots of excitement for sure. Any other questions, Nancy? From the chat before we go to Nancy?
I'm not seeing any in the chat.
Nancy?
Yes, thank you so much for the information, Dana. I do have a question. If you and your team have a list of previously Preschool Promise interested programs who were not awarded, and I asked this as potentially a strategy as slots continue to become available, and seeing if maybe we do need to increase the number of grantees that we have in our region.
Yeah, great question. So with our procurement team, we worked on having there's like a mailing list on our website where people can go ahead and subscribe themselves from when we have like opportunities. So that's one way to do it. So what I can do is I can find the link and send it to all of you, because that happens from time to time. You're going to have an entity within your hub region that is like, hey, I want to learn about opportunities. So that's one of the ways that we have them available. So I will definitely make sure that we get that sent out to you all. And nice meeting you, Evan, in person. Okay. Any other questions? No? Okay, and there's no more in the chat?
Just a couple of comments about Eastern Oregon providers being excited about the RFA.
Yes, yes. And we received some emails here as well of like, I'm clicking on the link, like, what do I need to do? And we're like, oh, no, you don't need to do anything. Not right now. So their process will come later, obviously, right? If they're in the eligible provider list. Well, I really appreciate being invited, right? I know some of you weren't able to go ahead and like me because, spring break and all of that. It is, one of those processes is causing a lot of excitement. And we're here, it's a new process. Never implemented something like this. So just, I ask for your patience and grace as we move forward with this. And just to summarize, only hubs are the ones that apply, right? Not grantees. So we'll go ahead and send clarification. Please go ahead and collaborate with your local partners, with other publicly funded programs, as far as like what is the need, right? In our community, the last thing we ever want to do is like put more slots and then put you in a situation where you're stressing out about filling those slots. That is not what we want to do. Do not get caught up in the 77 number. Because that number changes. Does that make sense? It may increase. Our commitment right now is that any slots that become available, for, the 15 hubs that this really pertains will be is that our commitment is that we will reallocate them to your hub region, right? And then it's through a period of technical assistance back and forth where we may need to look at other, different hub regions. So, because we're trying to be responsive to where the need is. And then also with Preschool Promise, we are looking at ways of like doing things a little bit different of like how do we ensure like full usage of our funds when we have like low enrollment or we have like people exiting in the middle of a program year, right? And we're not able to reallocate. So that's the other piece of like, I know we're like, super hyper focused on the 77, but my recommendation for you all is don't go ahead and focus on what is the need of your community. We presented the 77, so you know that there's at least a number of available slots. But just keep that in mind that the number may change, right? It may increase. And then we're also looking at different ways for us to go ahead and like respond to community need while also responding to like low enrollment and some of those decisions. And you all are welcome to go ahead and request a meeting with me if you need to go ahead and brainstorm anything, or and we're also going to be releasing that FAQ so we can have it all ready. Okay. Anything else before I go?
Any other questions for Dana? Thank you so much for joining us, Dana, and clarifying things and answering questions. It's really appreciated.
Thank you.
And
Have
I'm
a
just
great
going to put the exit survey in again in case you have additional questions. And I just want to thank everybody for such a high level of engagement and connection. We really appreciate it. And we really are looking forward to spring gathering. Yay! Can't wait to see you all in real life. I think that's it, unless Becky or Maria have anything else to share.
I don't think so. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. We'll hang on for another couple of minutes.